Thanks so much for taking the time to catch up today and to take part in the newest release from the Trident Talk series about sales engineering. I know we've spoken a few times, we met up a couple of times as well. So, and you're doing some great stuff in the sales engineering world as well with your own podcasts and series and getting that out there and really speaking to people and raising awareness about what a great career it is and also how difficult it can be to be a sales engineer as well. I think if I just let you know a little bit about me and what we're doing here. So my name is James Chichester. I'm a recruiter. I work for Trident Search, which is a specialist cybersecurity recruitment company. All I do is look to recruit pre-sales engineers. So we can place them with startups, scale-ups, large enterprise companies, predominantly vendors, but we do deal with MSPs, MSSPs as well. Wasn't always a recruiter. I was a police officer for about 15 years. So I'm sure you can imagine, you can appreciate people at times don't have a very high opinion of recruiters. So when I tell them I was a police officer and then became a recruiter, it doesn't necessarily go down too well from time to time. But what I've appreciated and understood is just how important the sales engineer is to the growth and development of a company, of an organization, and what pivotal role that is. And just all I'm concerned about is trying to highlight how important that is. And I've been able to do that in a series so far. We've spoken to Patrick Basang, Ramsey Maraba, Trevor Spires, should be talking to Chris White in the next few weeks, and obviously have the pleasure of speaking to you. So please, to anyone that's going to be watching this, if you could give us a little background to who you are, where you are at the moment, and your role as a sales engineer. And then perhaps, and we've talked about it briefly about, yes, we've highlighted all the great stuff that sales engineers do and how to get into sales engineering, what character traits or what skills that you might need, both personal and professional. But something I think is a really important topic that you brought up when we were speaking was about obstacles, about resilience and overcoming those obstacles. And I'd love to explore that with you.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, it's something that we don't talk enough about. And a lot of people, they look into what we do and they go, oh, it looks so easy, it looks so great. And yeah, there's an element to which it's, if you're good at it, you'll get along well. But there are some challenges that you need to get in the way. So, I mean, for everyone's benefit, my name's Sam or Samuel, I don't mind. I have always been a sales engineer. That's all I've ever done. I'm currently at a company called CoFence, a cybersecurity vendor. And really what I do, the majority of the times I talk about pre-sales. And so whether that is one-to-ones with people that are trying to get into the field, or maybe I do a larger community-based conversation. Basically what I love doing is I love talking about pre-sales and kind of understanding why we do it, how we do it, and also the specifics of those things and exploring that and understanding it. So one of the things that kind of you mentioned, James, that I thought would be nice for us to kind of look into was really why is sales engineering so bad? Why would you not want to do it? Yeah. No, it's not that bad, but there are things that you need to be aware of, when getting into this field.
And I think that's a really important topic, because I get a lot of contact and people reach out and get in touch and ask, oh, how do you get into it? Is there any advice that you can give? What skills or what traits do you need? Something that we don't speak about, because it can be, sales engineering is hard. It can be really, really tough. And there's a lot of responsibility and weight on your shoulders as an SE within a company. Why don't take me through your journey as an SE, because obviously you're very experienced, you're doing really well, but there must have been some really difficult times throughout your career.
Yeah, I mean, the challenges and the hardships I've gone through are probably, dwarfed in comparison to others. I'm not, this isn't a woe is me kind of conversation, but, probably the biggest challenge I face day in, day out is because if you look at me and I've grown this horrendous beard to try and cover it up, I look like a baby. I'm 27 at the moment, and people walk into a room and they see a 26, 27-year-old and they're like, this person doesn't know anything. And so when you join a new team as a sales engineer, or you go into a customer call with a 40, 50-year-old CISO, or something like that. You're immediately at a disadvantage. And people like to say that no, that bias doesn't exist, or but it kind of does. But it's not really a bad thing. It all comes down to proving yourself in that moment. And the first thing that I have to do on every call is prove to people why I'm actually there. Why I should be there. Why am I the person that should be delivering this? Why am I giving you this information? So if I were to whittle down, my main challenge, and probably in 5-10 years from now, it won't be that. It'll be a different challenge, because then I'll start going gray. And as soon as they spot the gray hairs on my head, I will never have this problem anymore. But yeah, it's being perceived more junior than you are. And when I say I've been a sales engineer my whole career, that I probably started working when I was 20, that's 6-7 years of being a sales engineer. It's not a lot of time, but in the sales engineering world, that is quite a long time. And it does matter. So you kind of have to really, if you're just starting out, let's say you've come out of university, you're as a associate sales engineer, you should be mindful that people will look at you differently to the 20-year-old veteran that's leading your team.
No, that's a really, really good point. And how do you cope with that? How do you manage people's expectations? Is that experience that's been built up? Are there any sort of practices or tools that you use, that you put in place when either communicating to a client, customer, or even a member of the sales force, member of the sales team?
Yeah, I mean, the first port of call is always to look into who you're going to be joining those calls with. If your account manager is on side and they understand who you are and they understand your skill, then they'll be a great champion for you to convince who you're selling to or demoing to, for them to kind of buy in as well. But let's say your account manager doesn't believe in you at that level yet. That's your initial kind of target and challenge, is to how do you get through that? And it kind of starts with putting in the hard yards, putting in the miles, early on, and putting in the shift. And never being able to be faulted, whether or not it's a piece of technical information or dropping the ball. You just can't do that, because the moment you do that, that label will be slapped onto you again. Oh, it's the junior sales engineer, they can't do that, or that they're trouble. And it's, people don't really like to think of it like that. But that's the kind of challenge you have to deal with. But it makes you better in the long run, because if you don't drop the ball, if you practice not dropping balls, you end up being able to manage more things. And once you've gone through those trenches, people trust you a lot more. And this kind of talks to some of the stuff you've been talking about with some of your other guests, James, is that trust is so important. And that's your first hurdle. Whereas a new SE is building trust in your AEs. And then when you get on the call, building trust with the person you're talking to. And that kind of, are you to be relied upon, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's good to hear as well, because there appear to be a few themes that are reoccurring when I speak to guys and girls in the sales engineering world, when I've spoken to guests that have come on. It's about that currency of trust. Is that you need to be trusted, but then you need to be able to trust in the people around you as well. How do you go about doing that? So I know when I was chatting to Ramsey, he mentioned it's about communication, it's about effective listening, and also having confidence to challenge, confidence to work with the sales team, with account execs, and obviously confidence to put yourself forward. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm gifted and somewhat cursed with overconfidence. So it can be a hurdle sometimes. And so I would happily walk into a room with the CEO there, and I'd be like, yeah, listen, this is what the situation is. And in my experience, I've kind of had to learn when to use that superpower in a way. But really you do start with focusing on that trust, and the way you kind of start that journey will be different for each individual. But probably the best thing you could do is to just build a relationship, especially when it comes to your account managers, right? Who are they? What are they like? Who are they as individuals? In 90% of cases, they will give you that time and they will talk to you because it's all about building relationships. We love that as individuals, as human beings. That's what drives us a lot of the time, is people and that relationship building. But then you will get that 10% that know that you need them more than they need you, and that does happen. And this is kind of where that tough aspect comes in, is the leading enterprise sales account exec, building a strong rapport and relationship with the new sales engineer or whatever. That's harder for them to get through, or to need to, or to even have the desire to do, than it is for, let's say, just your normal enterprise account manager, because they know they as the top account exec have access to the principal sales engineer. They have access to the best of the best. They don't need you right now, but there will be a time where you will be able to prove yourself, and you just need to not drop the ball when that time comes. I think they said that luck is like practice, an opportunity meeting. You just practice and you practice, and then you'll finally get that opportunity to kind of show yourself and prove yourself to, let's say, the leading account manager, and you'll have that opportunity and you'll win. And then they'll go, okay, so now I have 2 really good sales engineers, so now I have 3 really good ones, and you'll be on their list. And they may not show it, because salespeople aren't the most feedback oriented when it comes to, if you lose them a $500,000 opportunity, they probably won't like that. But you'll know, because they will lean on you sometimes, and that's a good feeling. And when you have gotten over that hurdle, that's a really good kind of, you feel very satisfied when you're able to crack that egg, for example. But like I said, everyone will go through it differently. But how I've gone through it is, I found success with building relationship first and work coming second. And this is all underpinned by masterful technical knowledge of your product, the process. Like, I want to know not just how my sales engineering process works and how my products work. I want to know how the accounts team work, the finance, the support, the CX team. If I know all of that, that account manager is going to come to me and go, Sam, I need to create a custom quote. Do you have any idea who I could go to? I'm like, oh yeah, you need to go to that person there. And all of that helps, just being as helpful as humanly possible. Like, don't take the mick with it. Like, don't bend over backwards where you don't need to, but being helpful and being selfless can pay back dividends.
And that's a really interesting point about being selfless, about helping those within the organization, helping your colleagues amongst the sales team. How important is that? How important is it to ask, not only helping, but ask for help as well? I always think that can paint you in a very, very good light, because it can almost endear people to you as well, because it shows, okay, shows a bit of humility. I'm looking to seek advice from people that might have been around a little bit longer than I have, or might know a little bit more about a product or a company, organization, or a point. In your opinion, how important is that to ask for help, to give help, but also to ask for help as well as an SE?
You cannot just be the person that gives assistance out, right? I don't know about you, but when I'm on LinkedIn and I get a message from a grad student who is looking to become a sales engineer, and they're like, Samuel, can you help me out? I don't know where to go, what to do, what to look for. Is my CV okay? Like, I glow. I'm like grinning into it. I'm like, come on, man, let's do this. And that's how almost everyone feels when they are asked for help, because you are showing them in that moment that you trust that person, and you kind of put it like, it shows a bit of humility. You're asking for help, and they're like, yeah, of course I'll help you. You'll get that 1% of people that might not help you, but everyone in the majority will be like, yeah, of course, yeah, how can I help? It's so important, because you cannot just give in a relationship. You have to take at the same time. But take can seem like a negative word at first, but it's all an equilibrium kind of challenge. And I think once you've built that up, where you're helping them, they're helping you, you trust each other a little more, because you're not only just trying to get them to trust you, you're trying to understand if you can trust them. We're all painted the picture that salespeople are trying to you know, sell you a lemon of a car or something that, you know, has got rust under the passenger side, you know, seat. And that's the idea that is painted of what salespeople are. And so sales engineers by definition don't think they're salespeople a lot of the time, and they're like, well, you need to prove to me. And I have that challenge is I sometimes come across that I don't trust my account manager, and they can pick that up very quickly, and that can make them very defensive. So the trust is two ways, and the only way to build trust both ways is to help, but also ask for help and build that relationship up as a whole. And I think one of the stressful things about what we do when it comes to, you know, talking about the negatives or kind of the challenges that we kind of go through is that there's no manual for this. You don't just look on the job description and go, yeah, you need to be able to read people, please people, help them, but also not help them too much, but then also take it. It's not that easy, right? And so you have to be quite socially aware of things, but also, yeah, it can be quite complex. And this is why you can get it's quite a high stress environment. I mean, enterprise sales is a high stress environment, full stop. But you know, sales engineers are part of that team and part of that process. We feel it too. We don't have a number assigned to us, an opportunity assigned. Like if that deal goes south, it's not usually our fault. But we do still feel that stress, and that's one of those tough things that come from it. And so if you can build that trust, if you can build that relationship, you will end up avoiding a lot of that pain and stress in the long run.
And that's interesting. So for you, where do the stresses come from? Is it not, you know, is it not having a great relationship in the past with the sales force, account execs? Is it not having time to actually invest in the product or understand the product or understand the expectations of a client? Where do you find that it's caused issues in your career?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask a sales engineer what are the things that give you stress in your job, they'll go salespeople, 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 nothing, and then salespeople again. I don't really think that way. I find that, and this could be you know, a little more serious, but ambiguity is something that stresses me out. You know, if you're a startup, for example, you might find more ambiguity there and a bit more confusion, a bit more dynamic ability being required in a startup. Whereas if you're going into a Salesforce, if you're going into a Cisco, a VMware, something like that, you will probably have less ambiguity. Probably everything's quite structured. If you sit in the middle of those two things, you're going to be full of structure, but then there'll be places where there are none. And ambiguity is where I fall to pieces. I am clarity driven. I am structured. You know, that is what kind of keeps me grounded, is knowing that I can fall back onto a process or a little document that says, this is Sam's job, you know, don't annoy him, you know. So that's something that gets to me. And you wouldn't think that, because if you look at my work history, it's startups from start to finish, and then a mid-sized enterprise selling organizations where ambiguity is everywhere. You know, that's not to say that the organizations I work for are confusing and not organized. That's not it. It's just in a startup and in a smaller organization, you have to be more dynamic. You have to be able to jump around, and, you know, and you'll read a book, like you'll read 6 Habits, you know, by Chris, for example. And in there'll be a section that talks about discovery and how important discovery is, right? And in that book, they'll say, you need to do discovery calls, you need to prep, you need to do discovery, right? And that gets burned into your brain as a sales engineer, you know, or someone that's becoming a sales engineer. Oh, I need to do that. And then you get into your organization that have never done discovery calls before, and you say, we need to do discovery calls. And they're like, why would you need to do that? Just get on the call and figure it out. And it's the most ambiguous approach to an opportunity you could possibly think of. And so these are the kind of things that keep me up at night sometimes. Maybe not that hard. I mean, I'm pretty good at just, you know, blocking it out. But those are the things, or at least some of the things that can, as a sales engineer, if you walk into that organization expecting the world, you will start feeling a little challenged, if that makes sense. But hopefully that gives you an idea of maybe just one
Nice.
of the things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about, for me, I think a big thing is when I speak to guys and girls, it's resilience. Is you almost plan for the best, expect the worst, because anything can happen. And it's about being resilient, and it's about having confidence and strength of confidence, strength of character. What's your take on the relationship between the SC and the sales team? So account execs, business development managers, salespeople. How important is that relationship in a successful career as an SC?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost obvious, but you know, when you have ambiguity in an opportunity, when you're first presented to it as a sales engineer, you get a call from a BDR, you get a call from your account manager. Oh, I've got this up, or it's this X number of users, or it looks tasty, it looks great, right? But then you're like, but what actually is it? What are they using? Who's going to be there? What's going on? And they're like, oh, well, I don't really have all the answers. And then you go to your account manager or the other person and say, oh, what info have you got? And it's all a bit ambiguous, right? It's not super clear. To expect it to be detailed and focused and organized is you're setting yourself up for a challenge. But if, for example, it's not clear and you don't have a strong relationship with your sales counterpart, and you turn around and you say, oh, you know, have you got any extra information on these guys? It can come across as if you're questioning whether or not they're even doing their job right.
Yeah.
So building that relationship with your account manager or whomever that may be allows you to ask tougher questions, allows you to request a bit more. Because if you're building that relationship and they start to trust you and you guys are working together and they can see how much you're sacrificing for them, you get a bit of leeway, you get a bit of credit to bank in and say, hey, I don't want to join this call tomorrow because you've let me know at 6 p.m. on a Thursday, right? You get a bit of leeway there. Or it might be that you get an invitation to a call next week and there's no notes.
Yeah.
And the Salesforce op isn't up to date. You know, so you can turn around and say, hey, do you mind sending me those notes this week? You know, once you build that relationship, you can start asking those things, and it turns that ambiguity into clarity quite quickly if there's a strong relationship there that you can lean on. And so I think that is just my roundabout way of saying that's how I would use a strong relationship to kind of help resolve that stress I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something that shows you that relationship is almost the most fundamental relationship you should be owning.
Yeah. And I think that's a really, really important point about the relationship, the nature of the relationship, the closeness, how you build that and how you develop that to being, it's not obviously being an exclusive SE, it's not exclusive to being successful. But if anyone's watching this thinking like, right, what, you know, as an SE, I'm growing and developing in my career, what do I need to be looking out for? I think that's a really, really important point and very eloquently put. So thank you. I really appreciate that, Sam.
No worries.
Obviously, fantastic career starting out as an SE. Say starting out, you've been at it for a few years now. But if you weren't an SE, if you weren't a sales engineer, what would you be doing?
Oh,
I can see the guitars in the background.
it's a
So
good. I mean, we all want to be a rock star, right? And
yeah.
it's interesting. I think I was looking at Consensus, the pre-sales tool, on LinkedIn at some point. It was probably a few months ago, and there was like a poll of, you know, what did you do before you were an SE? I think the most common answer to that was like creative art, like acting or dancing or a performer of some description. And I kind of relate to that a lot. Like I feel like I would have been a type of performer. I don't know what I would do. I'd probably end up being a bricklayer if I think about it, because I probably wouldn't be able to be a performer. You know, I'm not a Tom Cruise lookalike. I mean, I can try, but I feel like performance. That's kind of what I do now. That's kind of what I like doing. If not, I'd just, you know, I don't know. I'd own a train model shop or something. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't think about it. I would panic if I thought, well, what if I wasn't doing this? I would probably panic.
Yeah. It's I sort of tend to find I get a lot of people getting in touch, very attracted to the idea of being an SE. But once you're an SE, that's it. People are SCs for sales engineers for life.
Yeah.
It's not one of those roles where they tend to become an SE and then look to do something else. So either you're in, you might be a security architect, you might be a technical account manager, and then you move into SE, then you stay there. It's fascinating. It's really, really interesting that people get a lot of satisfaction from the job and from doing that role, because it's almost the best of both worlds. You're a seller, you're selling, but you're working within a team. It's a really important role. And also you've got that technical ability, that technical background as well. It's a really unique, special position to be in.
Yeah, you get to be an expert in
Yeah,
your technology.
yeah,
You get to be a performer and sell, but you also get to have that social aspect of
yeah,
being a social seller and be like, oh, well, you know, how's your day, and all that stuff. And you can if you're in any sentiment like nerd, like, you know, or if you're anything like me and at the age of 15 or 16, you're trying to build like a server in your backyard or in your garage or something like that, you can translate those skills,
yeah,
because being able to understand technicalities and being inquisitive is probably the thing I'd call it, allows you to just grow and grow.
mm,
But the thing that you cannot really be taught as easily is how to have a conversation, how to
yeah,
be comfortable talking to strangers. Like, that is something that causes a lot of people in our industry a bit of panic, because they become a sales engineer, they train for their first 3 to 4 months, they get on a call, and then it all crumbles down in front of
yeah,
them. They're like, oh goodness, what's
yeah,
happened? So I feel like that's probably why you get a lot of people who are one job first and then become sales engineers.
yeah,
It's very rare to just become or to just be a sales engineer. And I feel like if I could have, I would have liked to have been another role for longer to prepare me for
yeah,
that kind of social side. Like,
yeah,
if you were a salesperson or if you were a support engineer and you're constantly calling like people to solve their challenges, that transition would probably be easier. But I just kind of fell into it. It's
yeah,
like someone literally did throw me into the deep end.
yeah. Well, mate, you're doing, from the length of time that we've known each other and from speaking to people in the industry, you're doing very well. So if you've jumped in with both feet, and
You're far too kind.
uh,
Far too kind. I don't deserve it. Not
no,
yet,
you do.
anyways.
No, you do. Honestly, you do. No, Sam, thanks so much for taking the time to chat to me today, mate. I really appreciated it.
No worries. You've been a pleasure. Thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much.
you.